Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and before I introduce my special guest for the day, I do want to send out a special thank you to Karen Steele, publicist at Baker Publishing, for connecting me with these wonderful authors. And today's guest included. I would like to welcome Liz Johnson to the show today. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. Where to start? Well, I've been writing professionally for a little over 10 years now, and I am working on book number 20. I started writing when I was 7 and just sort of never stopped. And in my day job, I am a marketing manager for a nonprofit, and that fills most of my days, and writing fills most of my evenings and my weekends. And I'm an aunt to 5 amazing kids, and so I love doting on them. And I live in the Phoenix area and have, just really, enjoyed, I lived sort of all over the country, but I lived in Colorado Springs and Nashville and a number of places, but I moved back to Arizona a few years ago, and it's nice to be close to family again.
Oh, okay, cool. So speaking of 5 kids, I have 3 nieces and a nephew, and my daughter comes to visit from time to time. So talk about having 5 kids at one time. It can be crazy.
Well, it's 5 nieces and nephews, and they don't live with me, thankfully. So.
Well, yeah, no, but.
But when they all get together, it definitely, we notice the volume goes up in the room real fast. But they're between ages 10 and 16, and they are they're just delightful. They're smart and kind and funny, and it's so much fun to be around them. And I love seeing them. I mean, they were great when they were young, but now that they're getting a little older and seeing their personalities develop, it's just been a joy to see them explore their passions and figure out what they're really interested in. And so it's been great to be a part of their lives, and I'm really thankful for them.
Well, yeah. I mean, my twin nieces are 5, my nephew's 7, and then my daughter's 11. Well, going to be 12 in October, and my oldest niece is 12, turning 13. So yeah, you can probably imagine how that crazy that can get. Anyway, so let's get past the icebreaker here, and talk about writing. So, what inspired you to become a writer?
Sure. Well, I just always had a passion for writing. I always enjoyed it. Anytime there was a project in school, that's what I was going to do. I was like, if I had some sort of special project, some people would paint pictures, but I was going to write a story. That was always a given for me. And I, through high school, I was writing stories. I distinctly recall my best friend, she was working on sewing a prom dress for 4-H, and I would go over to her house with my floppy disk, because this was, a few years ago, and I would take my floppy disk over to her house and put it in her computer, and I would sit and write at her computer while she was sewing, and we would chat, but I was just always writing. And so when I was 20, I don't know how old I was. I guess I was 25. I had this idea for a book, and I told a coworker about it, and I said, "Oh, I'll never finish it." And she said, "Yes, you will. I'm going to make sure you do." And I was like, "No, I'm really not going to." And so every day she would start asking me, "Did you write last night?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." And I got tired of telling her no. And so I set up a schedule, and I started following that schedule. And in 3 months, I had finished my first novel. And I say my first, it's the first one that was published, but I had written several before that were really bad. And so that book became my first published novel, The Kidnapping of Kenzie Thorne, which came out in 2009.
Oh, wow. That sounds like it would have been really intriguing. I'd have to go back and look at that. Yeah. So tell me what the inspiration was for this Georgia Coast series.
Yeah, so I love the Georgia coast, and I hadn't been up until, I don't know, probably 6 years ago or so. And I was living in Nashville. My aunt called me. She and my uncle had rented a condo on the beach in St. Simon's Island for a few months. And she said, would you like to come stay with us for a weekend? And I was like, well, yeah, but I was like, but it's like a 9-hour drive from Nashville. I don't want to make that drive alone. Can I bring my best friend? And she said, yes. So the two of us tooled down to Nashville together and, made this long road trip. Anyway, we got there for Easter weekend. So we were there for I think we were there for 3 days. And it was the most, just so beautiful and so much history. And one of the days we were there, my aunt said, hey, would you like to go to Savannah? And I said, yeah, I would. And so we took a day trip up to Savannah and went on these tour buses. And what I love about Savannah is that it is a city about stories. Like, everybody in Savannah has a story and they want to share it with you and they want to tell you all about it. And I love that aspect of Savannah, and that really drew me in and gave me actually a lot of story ideas based on things that I heard during my travels there. So anyways, I just fell in love with the area, and I thought, oh, I'd really like to write a series that sort of explores the history of the area, as well as the modern day, what it's like to live there and experience life kind of, right along the Georgia coast there and the barrier islands. So that's what I did.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've only been to Savannah once, but I haven't done a lot of touring and stuff down there. So was it fun and fascinating to research?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I absolutely adored it. So, so the first book in the series, Sparkle of Silver, takes place on St. Simon's Island, but the second two books, Glitter of Gold and A Dazzle of Diamonds, which is my newest one, they take place in Savannah. And
now that we're talking about it, hold on a
okay.
second. I'm gonna have to show it off. I got the art copy. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yep, that's it. Got it. Yay. I had to show it off for those of you watching. Now, those of you listening, you'll have to look at the show notes blog post when this airs. This is coming out on August the 4th. So it'll either be out on the day that you hear this, or it'll be out a little after that. Because I've got two authors with 2 books releasing on the same day. So I'll have to, yeah, because Lynette Eason is also, who's going to be on the show that day, she's also releasing a book on the 4th.
Yes. I have a lot of, my book has a lot of book twins out there this year, lots of friends who are releasing on the same day. So I'm excited for them too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I just had to show that off. So tell me a little bit about your process. Are you a plotter, a plantser, as they say?
Yeah, I definitely fall somewhere in the middle. I guess I would be a plantser in some ways. When I first started writing, I was writing for Love Inspired Suspense, and I really enjoyed writing for them. But one thing that taught me was that I had to have an outline for my whole book, a long synopsis that was anywhere from like 7 to 10 pages that really laid out the entire book. And so I had to have all of that prepared before I even started writing the book. And so that was really good for me. It was good practice to sort of think through, okay, do I know where I'm really going with this story? And especially for suspense, I find that to be really helpful to have a really clear direction. And then if I know who the bad guy is, I can, sort of weave some, red herrings in there and things like that, which are fun and always a good part of a suspense book. But yeah, so I did that for 10 books with Love Inspired Suspense. But then since I've been writing for Revell, I've really gone away from plotting that much. So I spend quite a bit of time thinking through my book and trying to decide where I'm going and kind of figuring that part out. But I don't necessarily always write it down. But usually about, I don't know, probably when I have maybe like 5 or 6 chapters left, I will sit down and say, okay, we're getting close to the end. What are all the things that have to happen to wrap up everything else that's gone on in the book? And I find that works really well for me because I really enjoyed the discovery process of what this story is really going to be. And I love it when my characters surprise me and do something that I wasn't expecting. In A Dazzle of Diamonds, my hero, Tucker, is accidentally running for sheriff. And by that, I mean, he didn't have any plans to run for sheriff, but a special election is coming up, and he gets into a verbal disagreement with the candidate who is running for sheriff. And they get into this disagreement in a public place. And so they end up, anyways, he ends up sort of being forced to run because he ran his big mouth. And so now he has to run for sheriff. And it's kind of on accident, but in my mind, like as I was thinking about the book before I started writing, really, he was just running for sheriff. It was no big deal. But it was so fun for me to sort of have that discovery moment, that surprise moment of, oh, this was an accident. He's not really ready for this. This isn't what he thought or prepared or planned for. And so that really was a treat for me. So I love those aspects. So I try not to plot too much, because I feel like I miss out on some of those moments of surprise for myself that I find also surprise and delight my readers.
A case of open mouth, insert foot.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yep. And that. So tell me, okay, so you've mentioned A Dazzle of Diamonds, so kind of give us a bit about what the book is about.
Oh, sure. Okay, so A Dazzle of Diamonds is about best friends Penelope and Tucker. And they've been best friends for 25 years. And Tucker is running for sheriff, and, on accident, but he still is. And his opponent unearths a letter that is sort of shames the Westbrook family, shames Tucker's family, and calls them smugglers and thieves. And so, so Tucker he's trying to clear his name in time to win the election. And in order to do that, he has to find this lost treasure. Meanwhile, Penelope is an event planner, and she has this big fundraising event coming up at her venue where the social matriarch is really threatening to pull that event if Penelope doesn't deal with his nonsense, as she calls it. She feels like his everything he's happening in his life, this besmirching of his family's name, it's reflecting poorly on Penelope. And so the social matriarch, anyways, is basically like, you've got to just deal with this. So they team up to go find this lost treasure and hopefully clear his name, help him win the election, and give Penelope peace of mind about her job so that she won't get fired.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a wild ride.
Yes.
Yep. So, are any of your books on audiobook?
Yeah, the majority of my Revell books are. So that's 5 books so far with Revell, and A Dazzle of Diamonds is supposed to be on audio, I think, but it's not out yet, so I'm not quite sure what the timeline is on that.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Yeah. Well, I think that the best advice I ever got was that you can fix anything but a blank page. And I think as a young writer, I had this fear of not writing good enough, that what I was writing wasn't good enough. And so I was afraid to write. Like I'd rather not write than write something poorly. But I think that authors, as they grow and mature, discover that that your first draft doesn't have to be perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. But if you get something down on paper, then you can go back and fix it. But if you never put anything down on paper or on your computer, then you're missing out. You're not able to edit that, what you haven't written. So you've got to write, even if it's not perfect. And I think it was Frank Peretti at a writers conference. I heard him talking about just this idea that anything worth starting is worth starting poorly. So even if you don't know how to start it great, just start it, just work on it. And then, then you can seek editing help. You can get critique partners, all of those things, but you can't fix what isn't written. And so you've got to write it. And that to me has always been an encouragement in that sometimes that first draft is rough, but that's okay, and it's supposed to be, and it'll get better.
I totally get that, because I'm a writer myself, and I'm doing rewrites on a novel now, and even with rewrites, you still have to add things and cut things, and you still have to do the brainstorming. So, do you use like music or any certain anything for inspiration, music?
I would say that the majority of my books have a soundtrack. And that's mostly just because it's whatever I was listening to at the time I was writing. I have a couple rules about what I listen to while I write, and mostly it's got to be something that I know well enough that I'm not listening to the lyrics anymore. I have to know those lyrics so well in my heart that I'm not thinking about them as I'm writing. And instead, I'm just using the music as a tempo builder to help me keep the rhythm of typing and help me find the rhythm of my words. And so I love to listen to music while I'm writing, but strangely, the book that I'm writing right now, because I've written so much of it at home, usually I do my writing outside of my home, but during this pandemic, I've been stuck at home like everyone else. And I have done so much writing at home that I find I don't listen to music when I'm at home because it's pretty quiet around my house. But if I'm out at a coffee shop or if I'm at, Panera or any place like that, then I definitely have music going in the background, and I've got my earbuds in to sort of kind of push out other distractions. And so I would say it's less inspiration and more just a helpful sort of what I'm used to, kind of just a helpful thing to keep my fingers moving, because I like the rhythm of it, and it helps me almost, like, this sounds weird, but I almost can sing my words back to myself to the rhythm of the songs that I'm listening to. And generally that music really varies. Sometimes it's, Phantom of the Opera soundtrack. Sometimes it's, I'm a big fan of the band Need to Breathe. And so I distinctly remember I was writing my third book when I think it was their third album came out, The Outsiders. And anytime I listen to that album, I am immediately transported back to sitting at my dining room table and writing that book. And I love it, because anytime it comes on my, my playlist shuffles onto my playlist on my phone, I just am like, oh man, I remember distinctly those moments of being there with the music and writing that story. And so I'm pretty, I'm kind of flexible in music, and I wouldn't call it an inspiration necessarily, but it definitely is helpful to me.
Okay, because I'm more of the, if I'm gonna use music for writing, I do more of the instrumental, classical. There's another station I found that I like that I can use, but sometimes if I'm rewriting or whatever, I don't usually turn it on unless it's like if I'm working like in fall or winter, because summer to me, and I don't know, this is the first time I've said this on my podcast, but I've told people this before, but summer can be the noisiest season of the year. I don't know if you know what that means, but air conditioners going, everything going on around. Yeah, it can be the noisiest season of the year. So it's hard to, music is just another, and I don't like to say this because I love music and it inspires me, but sometimes the music is just another one of those noises that get in the way.
Yes, it can definitely be a distraction. And I have found that to be true for myself as well, that if I'm listening to something new that I'm like not familiar with, then I definitely notice that I tune into the music more than I pay attention to my writing, which is not healthy, especially when I'm supposed to be writing.
But then I do have, and if it's songs that I know really well that I'm familiar with, I do have songs that get stuck in my head. So I have music with me no matter what.
Yeah,
that's true. I have had this happen, and I don't know about you, but I've had this happen where I'm in the middle of writing something and a song gets stuck in my head and it will not leave me alone until I figure out what it has to do with the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I had that in my third Prince Edward Island book. It's called On Love's Gentle Shore. And the hero is a musician, and he's a dairy farmer, but he plays guitar and sings at these community productions, these community shows, like once a month or a couple times a month. And I don't know why, but I just had this one song that was in my head over and over and over as I was writing that story. And eventually I ended up having to write new lyrics for the song. Obviously you don't get the melody in the book, but I could put new lyrics to it and be able to have him write his own song. And I discovered I'm a terrible songwriter, but I really enjoyed the process of thinking about him in terms of that song and in terms of how much he loves the heroine of the book. And
that could have been his theme song.
What's that?
That could have been his theme song.
Basically, yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so do you have any questions for me?
Oh, sure. Well, how did you get started on your podcast?
Well, I have I've been praying about it a lot and wondering how in the world am I going to get out, because with me being totally blind, it's not always easy to travel to do these different places. And I'm like, how am I going to get out and meet other authors? Because that's what conferences is all about. Conferences are all about is meeting new people, and it's not always hard for me. So I've been praying about it. And then a friend of mine who I met through her podcast, I told her what I had, the idea that I had. She said, and she was interviewing me, and she said, well, that may be what's next for you. And then I talked to another person on Twitter who's totally blind, who uses the Anchor platform like I do. And I said, well, is it accessible? She's like, it's totally accessible. And I looked at the app and I'm like, no. Well, at the time, that was over a year ago. No, not really. But then they've grown and developed and come a long way in accessibility. So, and then I started using that, and from there I just let the Lord. I wrote down a plan, and I just let the Lord lead me into what what to say, who to reach out to, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Great. So well, that's amazing.
And if it weren't for the podcast, I would never have been able to meet amazing authors like you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm so glad that God opened the door for this. This is exciting.
Right. And it's a great way to make connections too.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so where can people find you online?
Oh, yeah. So I am at Liz Johnson Books, pretty much everywhere. My website is lizjohnsonbooks.com. My Facebook is Liz Johnson Books. My Twitter, my Instagram, all of it, Liz Johnson Books.
Okay. And I usually and I've been asking authors this, especially if I know that they're Christian authors. Do you have a favorite Bible verse you'd like to share?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my favorite is Romans 5:4-5. And it just talks about having perseverance that leads to character and to hope, and that hope doesn't disappoint us because God has poured out his love to us through the Holy Spirit, who he's given us. And that to me has just always been such a great promise, that we don't go through trials for nothing, that our trials are used to really build us and to grow us and to ultimately give us hope. And isn't that what we all need in times when it's hard to see hope? We need the reminder that hope is being built in us.
Right.
Yeah.
That we do. Okay, so would you like to close us out in prayer?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time that we could share today. Thank you for all the listeners who are tuning in. And thank you especially for Anne and her heart for you, and her love for writing, and for connecting with other writers. God, I just pray that you would bless her and bless the listeners today. Just be with them and encourage them in whatever trials or whatever they're going through right now. In your name, amen.
Amen. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched 1,000. Thanks for watching and listening to Inspirational Journeys, because your story matters.